Hello, this is another tarot lesson. And, I have my blackboard, eraser and chalk, and this is me, the teacher, and that's a deck of tarot cards in my hand. And this is the tarot school. Isn't that nice? Gotta have a blackboard. That wasn't nice. Now you can do that to them. Okay. Thought I'd do that because I also wanted to show you my this is very handy to have today instead of Google. It's a dictionary. I carry this with me wherever I go in case I need to look up a word. It's very convenient. And just to show you how you can take things a little too literally sometimes. And it can make, then that gets confusing. But here, we actually have the word tarot in here. And I thought it would be interesting to just read it to you because it's nothing, no big deal, but one of a set of playing cards. One of a set of playing cards with grilled or checkered backs used in Italy as early as the 14th century. Also a game played with such cards in which 22 are trumps and the other 56 are the usual Italian playing cards used by fortune tellers and gypsies in fortune telling future events. I didn't put my glasses on. That's so grilled or checkered backs. They got to have grilled or checkered backs. Otherwise, they're not a deck of tarot cards if you take this thing literally. And that's what I think we do too much of. We take things too strict. I'll take my handy dictionary. It's much better than Google. Plus, you get strong. It's good good exercise to carry these with you. Just need a big pocket to put it in. So anyway, according to that dictionary, this deck here, the Morgan Greer, very popular deck, but it has, the backs are not grilled or checkered. So would this be a deck of tarot cards? You take things too strict, too exact, and you could get, it can get confusing. You can't get that exact about everything. And I think it's really, it's one of the good ways, if trying to learn the cards. The reason I looked at the dictionary is because I mentioned last session that dictionaries use a lot of keywords to describe something. They use little 2 or 3 sentence definitions too, but keywords are used a lot too. One word descriptions of things. And so that's why I think keywords are so a good way to describe a meaning of a card. We do that anyway with things. But if you want to learn, if you want to learn the tarot, I think it's good to start with take the most popular deck out there today, or one of them anyway, and that's the Rider-Waite deck. And if you know that deck, this is good if you want to learn the Marseille deck. If you want to learn the Marseille deck and you're having a difficult time with it, learn the Rider-Waite deck real well. Because there you have the images. And so let's say you say the 6 of Swords on the Rider-Waite, you have a guy ferrying a woman and child across a lake. And you know that picture from the Rider deck. So now I get the 6 of swords and a Marseille that comes up on the table. I can still remember in my head, okay, well, 6 of swords on the Rider deck is this image of this guy taking a woman and child across a lake in a boat. And I can use that to help me translate the Marseille deck. So if you can recall the 8 of cups, the guy walking away from a stacked pile of cups. And if you could recall what the image looked like on a Rider deck as you're looking at the Marseille, it helps you translate the Marseille easier, because all the image, the meanings of the cards will work with any deck. Whatever meanings you come up with for the 6 of swords or the 8 of cups doesn't make any difference what deck you're using. So if you and the Rider is such a standard deck today, if you were to use the Rider as a way to memorize what those cards look like, their meanings and what they look like, then when you go to a Marseille deck, you can say, yeah, well, I know that card. That's the eight of Pentacles. Yeah, I remember it's a guy banging out a bunch of coins. He's got them hanging on a wall. And that helps me translate the Marseille 8 of coins. So I'm using the image from my mind of the Rider deck to help me hit home what the meaning of that card. What would that card mean if I was using the Rider deck? Okay, that's what I'm using here. And it also helps you to realize that all these cards, there doesn't make any difference what deck you're using. It's what's important is the meaning that you give each card. So they're all the same. And like I said in the last video, I think if you can learn the Marseille, you could do any deck after that. Doesn't make any. You could read with any deck. And so if you're familiar with the Rider deck, just use those images in your mind as you're looking at the Marseille deck. So the Rider deck, I remember what the image looks like. I'm going to use that meaning for this card here on the Marseille. It'll be fine. That's a good way to do it. So instead of avoiding the Rider deck, I want to use the Marseille. I'm not going to go near the Rider. No, use them both. To help you learn the Marseille, use the Rider. If you're familiar with the Rider to begin with. If you're not, it still might be a good way to learn, because the Rider has the images on it. And it's a standard deck today. A lot of books written with the Rider deck. And then once you get to know that deck, just remember that you could translate those meanings to any deck that you're using. So what's nice about the Rider, like I said, a lot of sources out there use the Rider. My first 3 books, I use the Rider. And remember that it doesn't make any difference what deck you're using. The images are not important. They're useful in the reading, but they're not going to make a difference as far as the translation goes. As long as you know or have an attitude that the 9 of Cups is always going to be the 9 of Cups, no matter what deck it is. Rider deck's got a guy sitting there with a bunch of cups behind him. He's got a big smile on his face. So in a Marseille deck, it's just 9 cups, but I can think about that happy guy with those 9 cups in behind him, so. And it'll help you. It'll also help you with other decks that have different artwork. If you got the Rider as a standard to translate other cards and their meaning. Think the Rider deck, this is what that image is. Here's what it means. Now I got this card here. And I'm trying to find ways I think that would be good for you to learn the Marseille. If you, with me, it was the other way around. I started with the Marseille and the JJ, Swiss. And so they're pip decks. But I knew the Rider right. A couple of years later, I had a Rider deck too. And So I was introduced to the pip decks first. You more than likely are introduced to the image decks, and they're probably the writer for one of them first, and then trying to go back to the pip deck. But I really think once you start with reading with a pip deck, especially a classic like the Marseille or the Swiss, even, I think you're going to find a lot of enjoyment with it. I really do feel it's like reading a book instead of watching a movie. Reading a book, you got to make your own pictures in your head, and I think it's a good way to read. So it's a thought. Check it out, see if it works for you. I also wanted to talk about taking the question apart you're looking into, which is what a card spread is doing. All card spreads are allow you to look at a question in sections. And if you look at anything we're looking into, we do that anyway. We break it apart into sections. So whether you're looking at it rationally with logic and looking at facts, or there's something you're looking at very intuitively, we do that. We break the question apart and we look at it piece by piece. Now, if you're going to use a card spread to do that, it's nice to have a card spread that each position would be useful no matter what the question is we're looking into, which are nice, good standard positions that are useful no matter what you're looking into. Otherwise, you got to change the position meanings for every reading you're doing. And you don't have time for that. You could spend as much time figuring out position meanings as you could do in a reading. And you could do it that way, make a custom spread for every reading you do. It would take more time, cost more money, but it's easier to do more readings if you have a standard spread that would work with any question you got thrown at you. But the important thing to know is that that's what a card spread is. It's your question broken apart. And we see that all over the place. We see that in all sorts of examples. If somebody were to call you up today and say, what are you doing tonight? Well, that's a question. And now you might say, well, what do you got in mind? Well, I'm thinking about going to a restaurant. All right. So now we're talking about eating. Location. Where's the restaurant at? So you got to consider how far do I got to drive? What time are you talking about? Where are we going to meet? At the restaurant, or you want me to pick you up, or you want to pick me up, or whatever? These are all sections of that simple question about having dinner with somebody tonight. We break everything apart into different factors before we make a decision. Maybe this restaurant is too far away. I don't want to drive all the way out there. How about we go somewhere else, a little closer? Okay, we'll do that instead. So now because of the location, we change the location of where we're going because it was too far away to drive. So what we're doing is we're breaking everything apart into sections. And that's what a card spread does. The more facts you can get about a question, the better off you are. It just makes it a lot easier to read well. So getting started, there's so many different directions you can take with that. I think most places will tell you start with a writer deck. And today I think that's a good idea. But like I said, so many sources out there use the writer. Even other decks use the writer as a guide to what their cards would look like when they make a deck of cards. So it's really got a foothold on here with us. And then from there, if you know the writer well, then you can take those meanings and put them to other decks, like a Marseille. And you don't even have to take exactly what the writer meanings are from one source. The meanings aren't really that important as long as you like the meanings. You can go with my meanings, you can go with somebody else's meanings. It doesn't make any difference. Or you could take a bunch of them and blend them all together and say that this is what the card means. I read this book, I read this book, I read this book on the Eight of Swords, and that's what I come up with. Will be agreeable with all these sources. It means this. And then once you got a meaning, if it's a key word, it can just drift off in all sorts of other words, just like a dictionary can do. It has a meaning, but different words show different aspects of it. And with a key word with a tarot deck, you can drift off into all sorts of other things. Use the example of with me, the fives represent change. Five of Wands, Five of Swords, Cups, Pentacles, change. Well, that can go into spare change. You can go into winds of change, change of heart, change my mind, or alteration, modification, adjustment, rearrangement. Keywords. You can download my keywords list on my tarotmaps.com on my website in the downloads page. On the bottom, there's two rows. Bottom row, I think on the right, last PDF file on the right, and you can just download that. You could also download different diagrams of spreads. The Celtic cross is on there, and it fit on an 8.5 by 11. You could scribble all over that. You could just print out a half a dozen of them and throw some cards down, write them into positions, and then pick it apart with a pencil and pick apart your reading. That can come in. That's a handy thing to do. You could take that reading if you do a reading and you record it like that. Lay the cards on the table, write them down on a diagram sheet, what those cards were in those positions. Some notes about what you came up with. And that's why my log books I got to do that. But if you want to do it just print it out on a piece of paper, a half an hour later, you look at that spread again. You don't have to have the cards on the table now because you got it on a printed sheet. You'll see different stuff in there that you didn't see initially. And that if you were to do a reading for somebody, after you're done, you pick those cards up and you go home. So you're not looking at it anymore. When you got that printed sheet of paper with those on there, you'll start to see things, and you know the question. You'll start to see things you didn't see before. You can look at a reading for an hour later and come up and say, whoa, this looks pretty neat here. That'll happen. So it shows you how it can change, even though the cards didn't change. You're seeing it can change. That's how subjective the card spread can be. The mood you're in might change it. What you're doing might change it. You'll see it differently. I know that because I've actually done some spreads on YouTube here, and afterwards thought, wow, I should have said this or that. That would have been better than what I said. So I will change. So anyway, my suggestion, anybody's just starting out today, I would say definitely get familiar with the Rider-Waite deck, because it is really the standard of the times. And any deck you get after that, remember that, okay, I'm using a different deck. I'm going to use the same meanings. So if it's the Three of Swords on a Rider-Waite, how do I see the Rider-Waite meaning? Now I got the Three of Swords in this deck. I'm going to use the same meaning for this deck as the Rider deck. And I think it's a good attitude to have. That doesn't make any difference what deck you have. The title of that card stays the same. Three of Swords Three of Swords, three different decks. Still the Three of Swords. And if you have that kind of attitude, I think it'll really help you get a handle on the cards, because it doesn't make any difference what deck you're using. But learning the Rider-Waite today, I think, would be helpful. So if you already know it, that's great. It'll help you if you use those meanings, whatever meanings you're using from that deck in another deck, pip deck or not. It'll help you make that adjustment. So if the meaning looks confusing on the new deck, just say, well, I don't care about the meaning. The Rider deck means this, and that's what I'm going to use for this. And if you're using keyword meanings, which I really suggest, you're going to find that those meanings are going to drift no matter what deck you're using. They're going to drift. There's just some thoughts. Learn the Rider. You won't go wrong with it. Can't go wrong with it. And it'll help you with other decks. And it'll help you know the Marseille deck, I think, because you're tying the Marseille to the newer decks that way. It's not an isolated special deck of tarot cards, the Marseille. It's just tarot cards, 78 cards, no matter what deck you're using. And that helps you with that attitude of what it is you're working with. June 14th is our next tarot Zoom meeting. And Tuesday, this coming up Tuesday, 12 o'clock Chicago time. I will be on Facebook at Conceptual Blending and Tarot on Facebook, June 18th at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So 3 o'clock Chicago time. And I'm going to be making an appearance there every now and then. I'll work that out with the people that are there, the people that run that page on Facebook, Conceptual Blending and Tarot. And they'll let their people know that I'm going to be there. But I'm going to be there just questions and answers and saying hi. They got a great group there. And I know the people that I'm lucky enough to know the people that put that together. And they've invited me to come on by. So I'm going to be there. And we'll have fun. And June 16th, by the way, if you're going to go to our event in Chicago, Tarot Gathering in Chicago, two-night affair, Friday and Saturday night. The event is July 15th and 16th, of Friday and Saturday nights at the hotel. Some people are coming in Thursday. Some people are coming in and stay until Sunday. If you want to go, if you want to make a reservation at the Marriott for this, that's where we'll be. You have to make the reservation by June 16th. The event is on July 15th and 16th. But if you want to make the reservation, you need to make a reservation by June 16th. So you got about another week. And people are calling in and getting the reservation. If you want a reservation, you got to email me at tarotmaps@gmail.com. Say, I want to go. I want to get, and I send you a link to the Marriott reservation page to make a reservation for the room in our block of rooms that I've got. Some people are staying on Sunday. Some people are even coming in on Thursday. But if you want to go, you got to email me at tarotmaps@gmail.com. There'll be that address will be in the description here, and just write hotel reservations for the event. And I'll send you the link to the Marriott Hotel for the rooms I have blocked out. Got a discount on the rooms, and you can book your room for that event for the 15th and 16th of July. And we'll have a good time. Just a bunch of people getting together and talking cards and having fun. pros and novice alike. Anyway, keep throwing cards, we'll talk soon.